Spirit Island is played over a course of turns until either the invader deck is empty or you meet one of the win or lose conditions, which we'll talk about later.
Jim, can I have my cheat sheet cards?
Yes, you can.
Thanks.
There's one. There's the other.
Yay, because this one has, Jeb, this has my spirit actions and my turn order on it.
Hey, that helps. It actually does.
It really does.
Alright, so we'll go over what happens during a turn. So a turn consists of 5 phases. The first phase is the spirit phase. And during the spirit phase, all the players are going to do these 3 things. The first thing is to grow. And what you do is you choose one of the options on your spirit panel and you do it.
Right. And again, the spirits are all different. So you decide, once you're used to the game, you can do this simultaneously. If you want to, when you're first starting the game, you can discuss, well, not that you won't discuss anyways, right, but you can try to help each other, what does everything mean or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's little sections in the growth, which is the very top portion of your spirit card. You just pick one of those and you do everything that's in that section.
Okay. We should probably explain what some of the symbols mean.
Okay. I will talk about mine.
Yeah,
then?
go for it, because you already got it out.
So, my first section of the growth card says reclaim cards, plus a presence, and then it has an arrow with a 2 over it. So what that means is reclaim cards. So as I play cards, I have to discard them. So the reclaim cards means I get to pick up my discard pile, put it back into my hand. Anytime you see the plus presence and the arrow with a number underneath it, it's telling you that you get to put a presence on the board, and it tells you how far away from an existing presence you can place that. Since this one, in my case, has a 2, I could start at either of these spots and go to an adjacent, start from an adjacent point and go up to 2 away. So I could either put another one here, or I could go here, or I could go here, or I could go here, and then there, etc., etc. Jeb?
You get to, and when it says you put one onto the board, you can take it from either of your lines on your player card.
That's correct.
Except you can't pull them from this side. You have to pull it from the side closest to the empty one.
Right, because as these get removed, you get more powerful. So as if I want to generate more economy, I would take it off of it's very tiny, but this is energy per turn. I would take a presence off of here, place it based on these guidelines, and now when it got to my economy phase, I would get 3 energy every turn from that point forward. If I wanted to take it from here, it will eventually allow me to play more than 1 card during my turn. I start out being able to play 1. So I would remove this, and in this case, I would, put it in another spot adjacent to my presence already on the board.
Within 2, yeah.
Within 2, including the space that it's in, so you can always do 0, 1, 2, however you like. The next space on my card shows a picture of a +1 card, and it says gain a power card, and the other option, and the other thing to do is place a presence, and it's 0 spaces away. So in this case, I go to the power deck. Jeb will describe how to do the 2 different methods of selecting power cards.
Alright, so the first method is if you have the power progression card, what you'll do is look on your card, I guess over here. You look at it, they're numbered, so you just go to the next number that you don't have. You take that card from the pile that's already taken aside, and you add that to your hand.
Right.
So that's pretty simple.
Basically, they've eliminated any randomness if you use the progression track.
Now, if you're not using the progression track, you will choose either the minor or major power card deck. You will draw 4 cards from it. You will put one of them into your hand and then discard the rest into the discard pile here. Not your personal discard.
Right.
Because that would be...
Yeah, that would be crazy. And what's the difference if I pick minor or major, Jeff?
So if you take a minor card, you just put it in your hand. If you take a major, you have to forget a power card that you own to get it. And what that means is, it's just a fancy way of saying
You have to get rid of it.
get rid of a card that you own. So if Mickey has a total of 4 cards, like he does now, and he draws one of the major, he'd have to get rid of one of the 4.
If I keep one of the majors.
Yes, if you keep the major.
Yeah. And as a side note, if you end up getting rid of, if you choose to get rid of one of your starter cards as one of those options when you pick a major one, instead of putting it into the discard pile for the major pile, just slide it under your board.
Yep. And if you forget a minor or a major, then you put that card into their discard piles.
Right.
So that's it for getting a new card.
Great. So that's how you, when you're allowed to pick a new power, that's the method that you do it in. Back to my board again, there's another presence one. This one has a range of 0. Again, I go to the track. Which one do I want to take off? I would take it, and I would have to put it in something that already has one of my presents in it. My last space on the track is, again, placing a presence. This one I can go up to 1 in range, so I can go 1 away from a space that already has my presence in it, and I gain energy for the turn. This is on top of the energy that I'm going to get during the presence phase. So this would allow me to put yet another one on, and I would get an energy. Keep in mind, though, that you only select one of these. You don't go across the whole card and do all of them.
Yep. So for the growth phase, you choose one of those and you do it.
Right. Not optional to pick and choose what you're doing.
Right.
You have to do them all. I think you said that, Jeb. I just want to reiterate it.
Next is the gain energy phase. And what you do is look on your spirit panel and see what the highest uncovered energy number is. And that's how many you gain.
Right. So literally from the supply on my turn, at the beginning of the game, I would take 2 energy. So I would just go over to the supply, and I would put those right by the side of my board.
And if Mickey doesn't spend those 2, he still keeps them. It's not like they go away.
It's not a use it, lose it.
And then underneath it, he'll see how many cards he can play this turn, which
Right
is 1,
and,
right?
Yep, and at the start of the game, I have the four cards in my hand to use.
And then after the gain energy phase is the pay and play your power cards phase.
Right.
So now Mickey, he can play 1, and he'll choose whichever one he wants.
So literally, during this phase, so I can only play 1 card, so I'd select a card from my hand. In my case, all of them cost 3, and one of them cost 1. So unless I had either increased that during my turn, or had taken the growth phase with extra money, the only one I would be able to play is this. Now, keep in mind that there's the phases of being able to use the power. Fast phase is going to go first. Slow phase is going to go second. This is a slow phase card. And I'm going to go ahead and do that because it's the only thing I can to show you right now. And then I would have to return 1 to the supply because it costs 1.
And the book also says you could put the 1 that you pay for it on top of the card to remind you that you paid for it.
That's not a bad idea because I think Jeb and I were so enamored with the game that there was a couple times we were halfway through using our card and we went, oh, I didn't pay for that yet.
Yeah. Okay, so that's everything for the spirit phase. The next phase is the fast power phase. So what the players will do is if they have any fast powers, they can resolve them.
Okay. Now, as you guys just heard me say, I played a slow power card. But my innate powers on my guy are fast. So, if I had acquired enough of these elements by playing cards, remember all of these symbols up and down the side of the cards, if they're filled in, they count as elements for the turn. Unfortunately, I only got to play 1 card. But this guy would always have a fast power if I can meet these requirements. And I don't, but just so that you know, if I had any fast cards or this power, now is the time to play it. And I do have fast cards in my hand, I just can't afford them right now.
You not play it, but resolve it.
Resolve it,
Yeah.
That's what I meant.
Alright, so in this case, Miggy doesn't have any fast powers that he can play, so we will move on to the
Resolve.
next phase. Yeah, nice.
Oh,
Nice catch.
so...
We'll move on to the invader phase. So this consists of a few steps. The first one is the blighted island step, and what you'll do is if the blighted island card is revealed, you do the effect. And what that's referring to is up here, there's the healthy island side, but if that ever flips, it says blighted island,
Right.
and then it has an effect that will happen.
Right.
So you resolve that first.
So, in this case,
No.
no blighted island.
Next is the fear step, which is flip over the earned fear cards in the order that you acquired them, and then resolve the effects depending on the level, and then discard them. So
Okay, so just so that that's clear, when we were talking about the components and how some of the stuff works, we went over these fear tokens, and they would move down here and generate fear. So when this whole pile moves down here, one card will move down, they move all back up, and the process starts over again. So what that's referring to is that we pick up any cards here, flip them over, because as long as you're stacking them in order, that would be the way that they came out, and then you would resolve them. Remember, when you resolve the card, there are 3 different sections. Look over here. They're clearly labeled. That's a 1, that's a 1, that's a yellow, that's a yellow. And you resolve that part of the card. Once you've resolved it, place it into the discard pile. If you happen to have more, keep resolving until you resolved all the cards and place them in the discard pile.
right now we have no fear cards that we acquired. So
right, but that's like how it would have.
Yeah, that's exactly how it would have worked. Okay, so after that phase or that step is resolved, it's going to be the invader actions. So these resolve, as Mickey said earlier, in this direction. So the first thing is Ravage. So right now there's no card in the Ravage space, but say, for instance, that was there.
And this is actually, this is the Ravage is the actually invaders attacking us.
Yep. What you'll do is look at the card that's in the Ravage space. So what you'll do is go through each of the jungle spaces, look to see if there are invaders on it, and see how much damage they do to the land and to any Dahan that are present.
Right.
And how you do that, you just count up the damage that each miniature provider does.
Which would now be a good time to tell them
how
how much
right?
it does. It is on the back of your spirit action cards. It's got a symbol, tells you how much they do. But, just so that you know, your explorers are 1 damage, your towns are 2 damage, and your cities are 3 damage. And that is one of the reasons, it's a nice reminder of why the towns have 2 little buildings, the cities have 3 little buildings, and the explorer is just a single explorer. So you can always literally look at the figure and know how much damage it does. So we will give you an example of what we're talking about, because we actually do have one spot on the board that if the jungle was in the Ravage space, it would actually have consequences.
Yeah.
So
for this phase, the big thing is if the invaders do 2 or more damage to the land, then a blight is going to be put on the board.
Right.
So what we'll do is we'll look at all the easier ones. So
we'll go through this board, show you like what would happen in this scenario, and then we're going to make up a couple pretend ones, because there's some key elements to the game that you need to understand on how it works. So
we'll start with this space.
Just dawn, so nothing happens.
Nothing happens. Then over here, there is a dude.
He would be dealing 1 damage.
Which is not enough to do a blight, so we'll just pass over that for now. 1 there, 1 there, 1 there. So all these jungles, nothing would happen right now.
For blight.
Yeah, for the blight check.
All right.
Next, we'll check that jungle.
All right. So again, look at that figure. 1, 2, 3 plus him. That's a total of 4 damage. So the invaders attack the island first. That means if it's doing anything 2 or above, so if it's at least just not hitting for 1,
Yeah.
it does a blight to the island.
So since that's doing 4, we're going to take a blight from the blight pile on
the card,
and then put it in the land.
and put it in the land.
Things to note about when blight come onto the board.
Yep.
If Mickey had a
If
spirit
anybody did.
well, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll say yellow is here as well. So if this blight was placed here, then 1 spirit presence per player is removed from this space.
Right.
So both of these would go away.
Right. So if I had multiple, it would still only be 1.
Yeah, so if he had 2 there, he would just remove 1.
Right.
Now, if there was a blight here, and say one was pulled over and it hit that, there's now 2 blight in that space. And what happens then, Mickey?
Okay, so if you've ever played Pandemic,
Yep.
it has a similar effect. So this is, I think they call it cascading in this
Yep.
game. They are going to cascade. So basically it's like, ooh, another blight happened. It makes like a little explosion. So at this point, now that there's 2 on there, we have to place 1 other blight on an adjacent section of the island.
So we will take the blight
Another
from over
one.
here.
And we get to choose,
Yes.
so it can go here, 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 or here.
Not in the ocean.
So,
So if we choose here, then it just gets set there, and we
Right.
remove any spirit presence if there were.
but if everything was full, or if for some stupid reason
We
we
place it
chose
here.
it there, guess what? This one now already holds a blight, so it would explode,
And
and
then
we'd have to take another one,
take another and do it.
etc., etc. So that can start causing real havoc in the game. That's a very important concept to remember.
So we did the check on the invaders attacking the land.
Right.
Now the invaders are going to attack the Dahan.
I'll just point out when you read the rulebook, we're trying to break this down into the very simplest.
Yeah.
You can actually, like, once you get comfortable with the game, you can just do the whole attack on a
Right.
space all at one time. You don't necessarily have, we're just trying to walk you through it. It's not really spelled out in a step like we're showing you, but this is much clearer to understand. Now we'll go back through all the jungle spaces and see if there's any confrontation with the Dawn or the people of the island. So starting with Jeb or
Here, there's no invaders, so
no invader.
nothing.
Right.
Here, there is an invader and a Dahan.
So the invader does 1, but the Dawn
Well,
have.
So he deals 1 damage, so Dahan have 2 life. So what happens is
I
one...
was just saying.
I thought you were talking about the attack back.
No, I
Okay.
wasn't.
Alright.
Jeb just wanted to talk. Go ahead,
Yeah, I
Jeb.
did. Okay. So he did 1 damage to the Dahan, so I flip it upside down to represent that he's taken 1 damage.
Yep.
And then after he attacks, then the Dahan gets an attack back. They have 2 attack power
Right.
per Dahan.
So that one you just have to remember. The Dahan don't have anything that represent,
Yeah.
hey, they have 2, really.
you just remember they
Well,
attack
no,
for 2 and they
they're
have 2
mushrooms.
life.
They have a stem and a cap.
Yeah.
2. Is that pushing it, Jeb?
I'll give it to you.
All right.
Alright, so the Dahan got hit for 1, and then now he attacks back for 2. The Explorer only has 1 life, so he would be killed and removed off the board.
Right.
So that's how that would work.
Okay,
And
so
then
we'll check the other ones.
No
No Dahan
Dahan.
there.
No
No
Dahan.
Dahan there. No Dahan there. Notice that invaders don't affect presence in any way. The Blythe is the only thing.
Yeah.
And unless some card in the game that we haven't seen yet does something. And then nothing. Oh, and now we get over to here where we actually, the nasty spot that put a Blythe,
Yeah,
which we
that's-
took off,
yeah.
which is okay, but we'll show you now. That has 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 damage. He only has 2 life or 2 defense, however you want to word it.
So he's gone.
He would die.
And he doesn't even get a chance to strike back because
Right. Because he died first.
Yep.
However, what if there was 3 on there, Jeb?
we added up the invaders have 4.
4.
So
Right.
we have to damage
Most
the Dahan
efficiently.
most efficiently. So you can't go
1, 2,
1,
1,
1, 2, and
Right.
just kill one. You'd have to go 1, 2, 3,
1,
4, and that's
and then that's it.
So,
So you don't get to flip 2 of them on the side and kill just one.
right.
You have to kill the Dahan in the most efficient way possible.
Yes.
And then that guy would be left standing. He would attack back. He can attack however he wants. So you could, if you see he attacks for 2. If you had some kind of special thing in the slow phase and you were like, I can get rid of that city if I have some damage on it, you literally could go and put 2 damage on the city. Notice he's only got 1 tower standing up now. Or you could take the 2 damage and get rid of the explorer. Are you able to fall over into?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you could go.
So 1 damage to the explorer,
and 1 damage to the city.
and
So
he'd be gone.
either way, you're allowed to split up the damage, put it however you want.
So that's how the ravage phase or the ravage step is executed. You just
Right.
check the land and do it all.
And that explanation probably sounded really long, maybe a little bit complicated, but it's really not. We were just really trying to just step by step through. Once you've gone through a couple phases, it
You'll
almost
get the
becomes
picture of
second
it.
nature.
Yeah.
Other than like, oh wow, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
Just do things step by step.
Yep. After the ravage takes place, you're going to do the build step, which again, we're just going to use the jungle as an example.
Yep.
What you'll do is look at that. The build is going to happen in whatever space is in that on that card. So like I said, jungle. And then you are going to check those spots to see what gets built where. So
Right.
This one is, what's the best way to put this? If there are invaders in the spot, if there are more towns than cities, you add a city. Otherwise, you add a town.
Right.
So we'll check again. This has no invaders, so nothing gets built. Check here. It does have invaders.
Are there more towns than cities, Joe?
No.
So it gets a
Town.
yes.
So I would grab...
This will trip you up a little bit.
Yeah.
It's actually I feel like your brain messes it up more than your actions mess it up because you know what they're saying and saying it sounds funny.
Yeah, so I would put a town here, but I'm
Right.
not going to keep it there.
All right.
Here, same thing. Here, same thing. Same thing here. So there would be a town in each of those.
Right.
And then now we'll check this one. And what's the condition? If there are there more towns than cities?
There are not more.
So a town would be placed.
Right.
Now, if this was reversed like that, and we came to this and had to build, are there more towns than cities?
Yes.
So we would place a
A
city.
city.
So that's how that works.
Right.
All right. And then after the build step is the explore step.
Which you got a sneak preview of.
So we'll say jungle again as our example. So you flip the top card. Oh, it was a jungle. So you're going to add an explorer if there is a town or city in that spot, or if it is adjacent to a town, city, or ocean. And you only add 1 explorer. So let's do the explore phase really quick for jungle.
All right, let's look at that. Jungle, is it adjacent to a town, city, or ocean?
Yes.
It is, so it would get an explorer.
Yep.
Let's look at this one. Is it adjacent to a town, city, or ocean?
Yes.
And it would get an explorer. Is this one?
Yes.
Yes, it would get a explorer. Is this one?
Yes.
Yes, it would get an explorer. Is that one?
Yes.
Yes, it would get an explorer. Is this one?
That one actually has a city in it, so yes, it will get one.
Yes.
So for the explorer phase, it's basically putting more
Explorers.
on the board.
Right.
Once the Ravage, Build, and Explore are done, you're going to advance all of them to the left.
Right.
So this Explore card would move to the Build. If it was in the Build, it would move to the Ravage. If it was in the Ravage,
it would be
move.
discarded.
So
As you can see, you get, basically, if you're paying attention, you get 1 turn without them attacking you.
yes.
That's it.
And you get a little future knowledge of what's going to get ravaged.
Yeah, a little bit. So you can plan a little bit. So unless you have a card that's going to keep them from doing an action, forget it.
that's everything for the invader actions. So I make it sound like nothing happened, but they do a lot of bad stuff.
Yeah, we talked for a long time for something that actually relatively goes pretty smooth.
All
But
right.
all that we just talked about was all invader.
Yes. And once the invader phase is done, then the slow power phase happens.
Right.
And
So
Mickey,
at this point, you can use your cards that have turtle down there, blue circle here, or any innate powers that have the turtle symbol. So my card that I played and paid for actually has a slow action. It says I have a distance of 1 and I can target any space. So that means I start from here or here, and anything that's adjacent I can target with this card. And this is a good example because this has the mechanic that Jeb had to correct me every single time we talked about it. It has the gather mechanic on it. So the gather mechanic, I have gather up to 2 explorers or gather up to 2 dawn. So Jeb's going to describe that for you. So my ability is this. I can target anything with a range of 1.
Okay, so Mickey.
Yes.
What land are you targeting? That is the first thing you have to decide.
Alright, so I guess let's see.
Alright.
So
it is within 1 distance of itself, so it's fine.
Right.
So Mickey picked this place. The action is to gather either up to 2 explorers or 2 Dahan. Right?
Actually, it's both. It's gather.
Okay.
Yeah, it's gather up. It's gather up to 2 explorers. Gather up to 2 dawn.
Okay, so the first thing is we know this is the space. So what gather is you pull the whatever listed
It is.
Into that space from adjacent spaces.
Right.
So the first one is gather up to 2 explorers. So you look at this jungle which he picked, then you look at all the adjacent spaces. There are 2 explorers that are adjacent to it, so he can gather them into that space.
Right.
And then the next step is to gather up to 2 Dahan. So the exact same thing. He's here. You're looking at everything adjacent to it, and there are actually 4 Dahan that are adjacent, so he could gather any combination of 2.
Right.
So we'll just say these. So that's what that card did. It just
Pulls stuff, gathers them together.
Okay.
All right.
And then there is, before you do that.
Oh, sorry.
There is an effect called push.
Ah.
So if there was,
If there was a card that said push.
So if it said push 2 explorers, then Mickey would pick this spot, or whatever he chooses. Then he pushes out of that spot into adjacent spaces. So
Okay.
if you push 2 explorers, you could push this guy here.
I can push them all back to where they were.
Yeah. So he pushed 2 explorers out and pushed 2 Dahan. So that's how gather and push works.
Okay. One thing to note on that, because it might come up while you were playing, if you have anything that alters the range on, like, during your turn or whatever, it never alters the range of the wording gather or push unless it explicitly says so. So in other words, even though I have a range of 1 on where I can pick the spot, I can only ever gather from an adjacent space. You can't gather from a space farther than adjacent.
Alright, so that was Mickey's slow power. So once all the slow powers are resolved, you can do those in any order your group decides. It is the last phase of the turn, which is called time passes. And in this phase, this is the order you do things. You discard all the cards that you played. So
just off to the side. Whatever.
Mickey discards it to his own personal discard pile.
Right.
Damage is reset, so if this Dahan was like that, and that city was damaged during the turn, then in this phase they would just flip right back up.
So
if you don't kill stuff, then
it stays alive and it's fully healed.
Yep. The elements on your cards that you played go away at this phase.
Yeah.
So
that's kind of self-evident because
your cards.
Yeah, I mean they would have given you markers or something to keep if you would have been able to keep that. But they do say it just as a matter of point. But Anything that I had here is not a carryover. Like next turn, I gotta find a new green element if I need it for this.
And then the last thing is if you had put any of the single turn effect markers on the board, you would pull them all off. And time passes is pretty much like a cleanup phase.
Yep.
There are some game concepts we need to go over. The first thing, victory. Victory conditions is to get rid of all the terror cards.
Complete whatever it says on the terror level. So the one that's always on the board, or during the standard setup until you replace it with a different card, is there can't be any explorers, cities, or towns. If you can do that, then you win.
Yep. All right. Then another condition for winning is if you get rid of all the fear pile or fear deck.
If that's all gone, look, it says victory. Don't forget. I know we've said it a couple times, but once you clear these down to the second terror level, that replaces it. And then now the new win condition is just get rid of cities and towns, and you don't even care about explorers.
That's how you win. There's a lot of ways to lose. Okay, so the first way to lose is if the last blight comes off of the blight card. So the way this works is once all these are removed, the card gets flipped, it's going to populate more blight onto the card, and then once all that blight's gone, then you lose. Another way to lose is if a spirit has no presence left on the island. So if any one player loses all their presence on the island, everybody loses. And then the last way to lose is if this Explorer deck, if you have to draw from it, and there's no deck here, then you lose.
And that deck is actually not,
right.
It's thicker than it goes pretty fast.
Yep. Alright, so next are the fear and terror. You generate fear from effects or by destroying towns and cities. So there are some power cards that will move fear into this pile. The other way to do that is if you destroy a town or a city, and how much fear does each one of those do?
Okay, again, it's on the back of the card. But if you destroy a town, you get to move one fear token. If you destroy a city, you get to push down 2 fear tokens.
Like Mickey said earlier, once this has all the fear, all the fear tokens, you move one card, push them all back. If there is a spillover, so in the case that all but one are here, and
then you generate 2,
then one goes.
I move the card down.
This comes back, and then that extra one will go.
So you don't lose anything for overage, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
Actually surprised they let you do that.
Alright, so a quick note about presence and sacred site. Your spirit has presence wherever the presence token is at. In the places that have 2 or more of the tokens, those are called sacred sites.
Right.
And there is a symbol on cards that differs between sacred site and just
It's
presence.
pretty clear. You can't, the symbols, they're clear when you're up close. It kind of looks like, it's a little bit taller and it looks like it's bursting at the bottom is what the sacred site looks like for a symbol-wise.
The term defend reduces the total damage done for the turn. So as you saw earlier, the invaders would do 4 damage at that place. If I had a defend of 3 on that, then they would only do 1 damage to the land, 1 damage to the Han.
Right.
Whenever you remove Blight from the board, you put it back on the Blight card, which is what that card says.
Although, this doesn't say it, right?
Yeah, the actual board, if you weren't using the card, doesn't say that.
Right, because basically they give you a whole bunch at the beginning, so if you run out, then you're, too bad.
And then there is a term called repeat, which when you choose a card to repeat, it doesn't mean you get the elements on it a second time. Like that card
Just
only generates, you only get to repeat the power. The miscellaneous stuff, in the growth phase, when it says to put a presence on the board, if you don't have any presence to put on the board, like if Mickey's spirit panel was empty, he would be allowed to move a presence to an adjacent place. But I think you said that was kind of a rare thing.
I did say it did say that it's kind of a rarity, and I also think that they said that you don't have to do that. You can move instead.
Oh, okay.
Like if for some reason you just
didn't
didn't
wanna
want
place, you could just
to, why you wouldn't want more
Right.
ability money cards is beyond me. But I think it did say that.
Okay. On your card, we mentioned that the innate powers are thresholds for the symbols.
Right.
You don't pay that cost. There are streamlining tips in the rule book if you guys want to look at that. There's also solo play. There's the adversaries and scenarios you add. The thematic map on the back like Mickey showed. And there's rules for scoring if you ever want to keep score. I think we're just playing either we win or we lose.
There's even some lore in the rule book, give you a little background story and stuff.
And then the last thing I have is on the back of the rule book, there is a huge cheat sheet, which
it's helpful.
If you don't want to read tiny print on a card, you can look at that.
Yeah, there is super helpful stuff all over the game in terms of cheat sheets, the back of this book, the way they design the pieces. Good stuff.
So we are going to have a 3-player game of Spirit Island. It's going to be me, Mickey, and Haley.
Yep.
And we will get back to that in like 1 second.